Hey guys, tonight we step into a world of flickering candlelight, creaking wooden floors, and the muffled prayers of women huddled in the cold corners of thatched cottages. You're not a queen or a noble tonight. You're an average medieval woman, born into a world where your future is mapped not by dreams, but by duties. The path ahead is damp with herbal steam, lined with birthing stools, and shadowed by old tales muttered by midwives with hands rough from experience. You are about to embark on one of the most dangerous, messy, and utterly misunderstood journeys of the era, giving birth. The thing is, you probably won't survive this. And that's not being dramatic. It's just statistics. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and what time you're listening, because I love seeing how far this sleepy little corner of history travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up early, as usual. There's butter to churn, firewood to gather, and no one particularly concerned that you're not feeling great today. After all, women are expected to work through everything, from the common cold to full-blown labor. In your world, signs of pregnancy might be as simple as sore breasts and missed moon cycles, but you're not consulting a doctor, because doctors, as you know them, rarely concern themselves with women like you. Instead, it's your neighbor Agnes, who smells faintly of garlic and knows a worrying amount about your bodily fluids, who declares with absolute confidence that you're expecting. She says it like she's predicting the weather. She's right, of course. She's always right. Her record is better than any royal astrologer's. You try not to think about it too hard. A child is a blessing. A heavy, squirming, crying, vomit-producing blessing. Your mother had 11. Only 5 lived past toddlerhood, and only 2 of those are still around. You were one of the lucky ones. You hope, rather gently, to be lucky again. The truth is, from the moment a medieval woman starts menstruating, the village clock starts ticking. She's of age. Of age could mean anything from 12 to 16, depending on who's doing the marrying. You were wed at 14. Your husband, a kind man who still chews with his mouth open, didn't say much on your wedding night, except that he hoped for a boy. You nodded and smiled. What else could you do? Marriage is less about romance, more about livestock and land arrangements. You've long since accepted that your value is partly measured in how many strong sons you can produce. Strong being relative. Last week, someone's newborn coughed, and the entire village held its breath. The baby lived, but only after being fed a mash of boiled apple and beer. You rub your belly and wonder what's going on in there. Is it knitting bones together already? Or still deciding whether it's a frog or a human? Historians still argue whether medieval people understood fetal development at all. Some believed babies were formed entirely by the male's seed, while others claimed women shaped the child through their thoughts and moods. Better not get angry, they'd say. You might give birth to a goat. There's a lot riding on you, and not just emotionally. Economically, socially, spiritually, motherhood is a full-stack expectation. Your role is carved out early and followed with the stubborn consistency of a church bell toll. Still, life isn't all doom and diapers. Sometimes the other women gather by the communal bakehouse, where the warmth of the stones eases their backs and loosens their tongues. You've learned more about childbirth from gossip than from any sermon. Old Maud once claimed she gave birth standing up while chasing a runaway pig. No one's sure if it's true, but it's an excellent story, and Maud's hips do look suspiciously wide. You begin to notice small signs. The way your feet swell, the strange dreams about fish swimming backwards, and the craving for things that don't exist. One woman swore she wanted to chew on limestone. Another wept over the smell of boiled leeks. You settle for salted turnips and hope for the best. There's no privacy in this life. Your body is everyone's business. A midwife stops by and casually lifts your tunic to prod at your belly with a thumb hardened like leather. She nods, satisfied, and mutters something about a fast one. And so you wait. There are no trimesters, just stages defined by superstition. The first, caution. No lifting buckets, no climbing stairs, and definitely no startling chickens. The second, indulgence. You're encouraged to eat soft bread and avoid cooling foods, which apparently includes cucumbers and anything blue. The third, fear. You're slower, sorer, and full of a creeping dread. There's no clear timeline, no ultrasounds, just counting belly growth by how far you can reach your toes, which, by now, you can't. Sometimes, you sit by the fire and listen to your own heartbeat, wondering if there's another one hidden beneath it. You think about the women who didn't survive. Your cousin Ellen, who bled out in a field. The baker's daughter, who died after giving birth to twins. You light a candle and whisper a prayer. The days blend. Your husband has taken to rubbing your shoulders more often. It's nice. You suspect he's terrified. He once asked what he should do if the baby comes out the wrong way. You told him to call Agnes and stay out of the way. And when you finally feel that telltale tightening across your stomach, like a belt being pulled slowly through your middle, you don't scream. You just exhale, stand up slowly, and call out for someone to fetch the midwife. The door creaks open, and the morning light casts a pale stripe across the rush-covered floor. You don't get to rest in bed. Not yet. The contraction has passed, and you've still got time. Probably. Unless you don't. It's a little like waiting for a pot to boil, while standing on a cliff's edge in a thunderstorm. Your husband hovers awkwardly at the threshold, holding a chunk of bread and cheese like it might fix something. You wave him off. Everyone knows this is woman's work. Besides, the last time a man tried to help with a birth, he fainted into the hearth and singed his eyebrows. You shuffle to the room that's been slowly prepared over the last few weeks, if you're lucky. It's dark, intentionally so. Bright light could invite evil spirits, or worse, judgment. There are herbs stuffed into every crevice. Lavender, sage, maybe a hint of mugwort if someone's feeling fancy. The smell is enough to make your eyes water. A birthing chair has been brought in. A sort of wooden throne with a hole in the middle. It looks like something a particularly strict teacher might use as punishment. You sit on it anyway, because comfort is not a thing you expect anymore. At least not for the next hours, days. Historians still debate whether prolonged labor was seen as a divine test or just a natural nuisance. Either way, there's no epidural waiting for you at the end of this ordeal. Just boiled wine and good intentions. The midwife arrives, wrapped in shawls and quiet authority. She's attended more births than anyone can count, and she knows every cry, every silence, every moment of strange stillness that sends cold trickles down spines. She greets you with a nod, sets her satchel on the floor, and begins laying out her tools. A knife, blunt, twine, coarse, cloths, already stained, and a small vial of oil that smells like disappointment and rosemary. Someone else, your cousin maybe, brings warm water and wipes your brow. You've barely broken a sweat, but it's symbolic, like baptizing your forehead in anticipation of what's coming. There's soft murmuring, a prayer to Saint Margaret, patron of childbirth. The story goes that she was swallowed by a dragon and burst out of its stomach unharmed. The metaphor is not lost on you. Another contraction hits. You grip the sides of the chair and breathe like they told you, slowly, evenly, as if your body were an organ pipe instead of a trembling, exhausted sack of bones. It doesn't help much, but it's something to do besides panic. They tie charms to your wrists. One is a dried piece of root meant to ease the passage. Another is a tiny iron key, symbolizing an open womb. Superstition and faith hold hands tightly here, like anxious friends. Someone mutters that a full moon would have helped. Another blames the cloudy sky for the slow progress. Honestly, you'd blame the goats if it made any difference. A knock comes at the door, and you hear Agnes arguing with the neighbor who insists on bringing barley water. You have barley water. What you need is someone to distract you from the slow, steady realization that this baby does not seem to be in a rush. The midwife listens to your belly. Yes, literally with her ear, and prods with firm fingers. Turn the wrong way, she mutters. Not exactly encouraging, but she doesn't panic. Instead, she begins the ritual of repositioning, tilting your body, rubbing in circles, murmuring half prayers and half threats at your womb. Come now, she whispers to it. No need to hide. A quick aside, medieval people truly believed that babies sometimes got confused and didn't know the way out. That's not even a joke. Womb wandering was a widely accepted theory. In fact, women who behaved erratically were thought to have wombs that had drifted dangerously near their throats. You don't have time to worry about that now. Your womb, if it's wandering, is doing so with intention. You've started to sweat. The room grows hotter. More herbs are tossed into the brazier. You half expect someone to throw in a frog for good luck. Your body heaves again, and this time it feels sharper, like something is really shifting. The women around you perk up. They can smell the change in the air, like midwives can smell rain before it hits the fields. You squeeze someone's hand. Might be your sister-in-law, might be the neighbor who milks cows, and let out a groan that surprises even you. It echoes. The sound feels ancient, like it's been passed down through your bloodline. A sound from the marrow. The midwife kneels between your feet, her head tilted like a hawk watching prey. She whispers for you to push, and you do, because saying no is not an option anymore. Your body is not your own. It is a tunnel, a vessel, a bridge between worlds, and you are the tollkeeper. A gush of something warm follows. Fluid, probably. Hopefully not blood. No one says anything too loudly. That would make it real. There's a rhythm to it now. Breathe, push, breathe, cry, moan, push again. The cycle has its own hypnotic pulse, and you ride it like a current. Around you, the room shifts in and out of focus. Faces blur. Hands appear, then vanish. Time becomes a suggestion. You start to feel the pressure. It's not pain exactly. More like your insides are folding themselves into origami. The baby is near. The women ready the linens. The midwife positions her hands like she's catching a fish with a secret name. One more push, they say, which is always a lie. Two more, still lying. Then suddenly, it happens. A wet, squalling bundle is lifted into the air, and the silence is broken by a thin, high cry. The sound of life, of victory. You slump back, sobbing and laughing all at once. The baby is here. It's over. Almost. The afterbirth must still come. You still might bleed too much. The baby might not breathe again. But for a fleeting moment, you allow yourself the smallest, most fragile joy. You did it. You don't get to rest just yet. The baby is placed on a nearby cloth, quickly rubbed with something coarse, maybe wool or linen, while the midwife keeps one hand on your belly and another ready to catch the afterbirth. It's not elegant. There's no triumphant orchestral swell, no pastel filter. It's squelchy and messy and smells a bit like wet iron and parsley gone bad. But it's necessary. The afterbirth, or placenta, must come out. If it doesn't, you risk infection. You don't know the word infection, of course, but you do know what happens when a woman starts shivering and burning with fever a few days after giving birth. She dies, usually quickly, always quietly. The midwife massages your abdomen and hums a tune that sounds suspiciously like a nursery rhyme, if that nursery involved bloodletting and suspicious cheeses. She tells you to cough, to push again, gently, now. You're so tired, your vision flickers at the edges. But you do as she says. There's a warm slide. It's out. Someone wraps it in a cloth and sets it aside, probably to be buried under the hearth or in the garden, depending on your local tradition. Some people believe that burying the placenta ensures the baby's soul stays rooted. Others think it should be burned, lest witches get to it and cast spells. Historians still argue whether these customs were religious, magical, or simply hygienic. All three, probably. That's how medieval thinking works. The baby, meanwhile, has been squawking and flailing like a tiny damp knight, protesting his first duel. That's good. It means his lungs work. You glance over and try to make sense of his face. Red, scrunched, suspiciously like a pickled walnut. You love him anyway. Or maybe it's just relief. Hard to tell the difference right now. "'Tis a boy," someone says, though you guess that already by the way they're all suddenly smiling wider and holding the baby higher. A girl would have been just as loud, just as wrinkly, but maybe not met with the same giddy optimism. It's not fair. But fairness wasn't invited to this party. They bring him to your chest. He smells like old bread and something sweeter underneath. His little hands wave around like he's trying to cast a spell. He won't remember this, of course, but you will. Every raw, throbbing second. Now comes the cleaning. Not for you. Don't be silly. You'll stay in your birthing bed for at least a few days. No bathing, no walking too far, and definitely no lifting anything heavier than a goose. The cleaning is for the room. Blood has soaked into the floor rushes. Someone will burn the soiled cloths, maybe with sage and salt. The air has that sour, sweet scent of bodily transformation, and no one wants it to linger. You're bundled into clean linens. Well, cleaner. Someone slips a warm stone near your feet, a luxury if you're lucky. You're encouraged to sip broth made of boiled leeks and onions. It tastes like tears and weeds, but it's hot, and that's what matters. The baby stays close, swaddled within an inch of his life. The idea is to keep his limbs straight and prevent crookedness. This means he's wrapped so tightly in cloth he could be used as a doorstop. You're told not to hold him too much. It might spoil him. You nod, but you'll do it anyway when no one's looking. The other women drift out slowly, some offering quiet prayers, others just nodding with a kind of solemn approval, like they've inspected a loaf of bread and found no flaws. You made it. You baked the human. Good job. Your husband pokes his head in. He looks stunned, a little pale, and holds a ragged bouquet of weeds he picked on the way to the cottage. You blink at him. He tries to say something romantic and lands somewhere between "you're strong" and "I can't believe how loud that got." You forgive him. He sits beside you, takes the baby for a moment, and stares down like he's trying to memorize every wrinkle. You allow yourself to lean against his shoulder. You're sore in places you didn't know had nerves. Everything is damp and achy. You could fall asleep right now, but you don't want to miss these first strange moments. There's no formal birth certificate, no camera flashes or Instagram announcements, but someone in the village will make note of the child. A mark on a church ledger, maybe. A whispered story at the well. She had him late, they'll say, during the first rains. These are the kinds of details that become lore. A neighbor brings a charm to hang over the cradle, a bit of iron, and a scrap of black cloth. It's to keep away fairies who might try to swap your baby for one of their own, a changeling. People still believe in those, or say they don't, but hedge their bets anyway. Better to be safe. You're told to rest now, and you try. But your mind is full, not just with worry, though there's plenty of that, but with wonder that you did this. that you lived, that this tiny, wriggling person exists now because of you. You glance toward the small window, where dawn is just beginning to edge the clouds with the faintest gray. The sky looks like stretched wool, and the air smells faintly of ash and rosemary. You close your eyes, and for the first time in days, your body lets go. You wake to the sound of chickens bickering outside and a faint draft slipping through the thatch. Your hips ache. Your thighs feel like they've been trampled by the village ox, and your back is a protest in vertebrae. Still, you're alive. So is the baby. In this century, that's already a win. You're offered more broth, this time with some stringy meat floating in it. Rabbit, if you're lucky. Rat, if you're not. You sip it slowly, each mouthful a challenge between your jaw and the spoon. You're told it'll build blood. You're not sure how much blood is left in you, but the gesture is appreciated. Then comes the real surprise. You're hungry, not just peckish, ravenous. You eye a hunk of bread like it's a roasted feast. This, apparently, is a good sign. A hungry woman is a living woman, and people start smiling again. Someone offers you boiled cabbage. You eat it, not because it tastes good, but because it's warm, and you want something, anything, to feel solid inside you again. Pregnancy diets in the Middle Ages weren't what you'd call balanced. They were more of a suggestion wrapped in superstition. No raw vegetables, too cold for the body. No fish with too many bones. It might make the baby complicated. Certainly no honey in certain months, unless you wanted a baby with too much hair. Historians still debate whether these dietary taboos were grounded in observation or just the result of one particularly influential monk with indigestion. During pregnancy, you were fed things meant to be soft and hot in the humoral sense. Gruels, stews, warm ale. The body was believed to run on the balance of four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Too much of one? That's where trouble starts. The womb, for instance, was believed to be naturally moist and cold, unless you upset it. Then it might wander. You recall your mother warning you not to drink cold milk during a storm. The baby will come with clouded eyes. Another told you to chew time before sleeping, so the child dreams of the saints. It made your breath smell like soup, but you did it anyway. The food itself wasn't always the problem. It was what the food symbolized. Beans were fine, but too many might cause wind, which was seen as dangerous in pregnancy. Wind, by the way, could mean anything from indigestion to spiritual vulnerability. Bread was safe, as long as it was from the right oven and hadn't been baked during a lunar eclipse. That one time you craved leeks at midnight? Well, Agnes had to say a prayer over the cooking pot just in case. Today, your stomach gurgles. The midwife checks on you and gives a satisfied grunt. She then shifts to examining the baby, who's been swaddled so tightly he looks more caterpillar than human. His face peeks out like a disgruntled saint. She tests his limbs, gently unfolds his arms, taps his feet, pinches a cheek to see if he yelps. He does. Healthy. Good lungs. No obvious marks of bad omens. He'll need to be baptized soon, of course. In case of emergency, the midwife is authorized to do it herself with holy water. Or even ale, if that's all she has on hand. Yes, ale baptism was a thing. Don't overthink it. You offer your breast. He takes to it awkwardly, smacking his lips with the concentration of a monk copying scripture. Breastfeeding is expected, but it's also watched. If the baby fusses too much, they might say your milk is spoiled. Or worse, that you're cursed. One woman down the road had to drink vinegar mixed with ashes to cleanse her flow. You make a mental note to be extra nice to the village herbalist. A knock on the door. It's a neighbor bringing a bowl of mashed peas and a crust of hard cheese. For your strength, she says. You suspect it's an excuse to peek at the baby. She leans in, eyes wide, and mutters a protective charm under her breath. just in case. Food and charm go hand in hand. There are tales of babies cursed through spoiled broth, of mothers who lost their strength after drinking wine poured during an argument. Everything carries meaning here. Your body is both a miracle and a cautionary tale. You nibble your cheese and smile politely. She leaves satisfied. Later, someone offers you ale. To warm the belly, they say. You drink it. It's thin, flat, and a little sour, but oddly soothing. You remember hearing that some noblewomen had wet nurses so they didn't have to stop drinking wine. You are not a noblewoman. You'll drink what's given and hope it keeps the shivers away. In the coming days, you'll be fed more of the same. Turnips, porridge, stewed fruits if someone's feeling generous. The idea is to rebuild your strength gradually. No fresh greens yet. Those are too wild. You need tame foods, whatever that means. You lie back again, baby resting on your chest like a warm loaf. The hearth crackles softly. Someone hums a lullaby about St. Bridget and her cloak made of sky. You feel your breath begin to slow, even as your muscles still twitch with memory. You wonder what he'll be. A shepherd? A thatcher? Someone who invents a better way to boil cabbage. It's too soon to say, but for now, he's yours, and you're his, bound by flesh, bone, and boiled leeks. Time has taken on a syrupy pace. The baby sleeps in fits, wrapped tight and wedged beside you like a warm bundle of twine and breath. Every squeak he makes pulls your attention like a bell on a string. You shift, wince, and whisper a thank you to St. Margaret that your body, bruised and rumpled though it is, still functions. But as your bones knit themselves back into something vaguely human, your thoughts turn to stranger matters. The womb. You see, in the Middle Ages, the womb was not just an organ, it was a character. A bit of a troublemaker, really. Doctors, well, learned men with robes and books, believed it could wander. That's right. Roam about your body like a lost goat, causing mischief. Feel faint? That's the womb climbing toward your lungs. Have a headache? Probably your womb nesting behind your eye socket. You laugh softly at the absurdity, but only because you're not in one of those treatises, being prescribed burned hedgehog ashes, or a hot compress made of moss and beer foam. You've heard tales of women who were hung upside down to lure their wombs back into place with sweet-smelling herbs. Historians still argue whether such treatments were ever common, or simply the eccentric fantasies of a few university-trained men who'd never seen a live birth. Wombs, it seemed, were held responsible for nearly everything. If you were angry, the womb was inflamed. Too quiet? The womb was cold. Melancholy? The womb was sulking in your abdomen like a bored cat. And when it came to pregnancy, the womb became something of a sacred cave, or a trap, depending on how things were going. You recall how, when you first missed your cycle, someone offered you dried mint wrapped in linen to wear around your waist. Not to prevent pregnancy? No. Heavens no. But to ease the womb's hunger. As if your uterus was a tiny, moody child begging for snacks, there was little scientific understanding of conception. Many believed it required not just the man's seed, but also a kind of willing receptivity from the woman's body, which meant that if you didn't conceive, it was probably your fault for not being open enough, or too cold, or cursed. Take your pick. You'd once heard a tale of a woman who bathed in moonlight to cleanse her womb. Another ground pearls into her soup to increase fertility. One woman even drank milk from a mare blessed by a priest. She gave birth to twins. Coincidence? Maybe. But no one questioned it. Pregnancy was often monitored by signs and symbols. You remember being told that if you craved sweet things, it would be a girl. Sour? A boy. If your face became flushed and puffy, you might be carrying twins, or a demon, depending on the neighborhood. The church, too, had its fingers in your uterus. There were prayers specifically for women heavy with child. One particularly poetic one referred to the womb as a chalice of God's will. You didn't quite understand it then, and you still don't. But you said the prayer anyway, repeatedly. Midwives, more practical, paid attention to the body. They knew which way the belly swelled, how the skin felt, what a healthy navel looked like. They'd press your abdomen and declare with eerie certainty whether it was a girl or boy. Sometimes they were right. Sometimes they weren't. But who was going to argue? The line between medicine and magic was smudged. You might be given a potion brewed from mugwort, raspberry leaves, and a pinch of something unidentifiable. You drank it without asking questions. Better that than be accused of doubting the wisdom of your elders. And then there were charms. Small tokens made of silver or bone, often carved with initials or crosses. One woman had a tiny stone shaped like a fish, given to her by a traveling friar. It was said to anchor the womb. She wore it every day. Her baby came out breech, but healthy. The charm was buried under the hearth as thanks. You recall a particularly odd custom from a village not far from yours. When labor began, the family would unlock every chest, cupboard, and door in the house to help open the womb. Someone once forgot the cellar latch and blamed the resulting long labor on that. The poor husband nearly had his beard pulled out in penance. Even today, as you lie in your birthing bed, you hear someone outside hammering a horseshoe over the doorframe for protection. Not just from wandering spirits, but from ill-willed glances. A neighbor with a furrowed brow could, unintentionally or not, sour your milk or cramp your belly. Better safe than sorry. And let's not forget the role of dreams. You once told Agnes you dreamt of frogs leaping through your cooking pot. She turned very pale and made you carry an onion in your pocket for 3 days. No one explains these things. You just do them. So yes, the womb in the Middle Ages was mysterious, sacred, erratic, and occasionally demonic. It was the source of life and the scapegoat for everything else. You rest your hand on your stomach, which still feels a bit like an overworked kneading trough. There's a dull ache, and the muscles twitch from time to time, as if unsure whether their job is truly over. You whisper a small thanks, not to the saints this time, but to your body itself. This strange, misunderstood vessel that somehow carried a human into the world. The baby stirs. You look down. His eyes flutter, and for a second, you imagine he understands all this, that he knows the journey you took, the lore he was born into, the whispered myths that shaped his arrival. But of course he doesn't. He yawns. You smile. And your womb, mischievous thing that it is, stays where it should. The room hasn't changed, but something in the air has. It's quieter now. Too quiet almost. The fire crackles low in the hearth. The herbs hung from the rafters have wilted slightly, and the thick scent of lavender and smoke has settled into the walls. You can hear your own heartbeat, steady and slow, as if your body's finally starting to trust that it won't have to run from wolves today. The baby sleeps, miraculously, and you're finally allowed to really take in the space you birthed in. It's not much, really. A small, shadowed corner of your home, or maybe a neighbor's larger cottage, depending on who had the best hearth. You'd call it a room, but it's more of a designated space, transformed in the final weeks of your pregnancy into something halfway between a chapel and a battlefield. They call it the birthing chamber, though chamber is generous. What it actually is: hot, dark, damp, and full of women whispering at different volumes. No men allowed, of course. They hover just beyond the doorframe, unsure whether to fetch water or go shear a sheep. The windows have been covered, either with thick cloth or just smeared with soot. Light is believed to disturb the process. Not in a poetic, a candle flicker breaks the mood way. No, literal sunlight could invite malevolent spirits. or draw attention from forces better left unmentioned. Better to labor in half dark, with only firelight and the occasional glint of an iron talisman catching your eye. Speaking of iron, there's a lot of it in here. A knife tucked into the straw bed, a small horseshoe nailed to the wall. Iron keeps away witches and fae, or so they say. Even your comb, made of bone and pinned near the foot of the bed, serves as protection. You never thought much about it before. Now, it feels like a knight's shield. And then there's the smell. Not just the blood or the sweat, though that's there too, but something older. A mixture of rosemary and stale ale, of boiled cloths and burnt tallow candles. You'd think it would be unpleasant, but oddly, it's comforting. Like someone else has gone through this before and left a trail of scent behind for you to follow. There's an assortment of objects gathered around your makeshift throne. Wooden bowls filled with lukewarm water, linen rags in varying states of cleanliness, a crock of old honey that someone swears will soothe the scream. No one uses it, but it sits there as if it might volunteer. Your birthing chair, or stool, depending on who lent it, has been wiped down. It's shaped like a flat bench, with a hole in the center and short legs. No backrest. Nothing fancy. It's purpose-built for gravity, not grace. If your labor was long, you may have leaned forward over someone's shoulders, or gripped a knotted cord suspended from a ceiling beam to steady yourself. Some cords are braided with prayers. One neighbor has one with a finger bone of Saint Cecilia knotted into it. You try not to think about where she got that. Historians still argue whether these rooms were more symbolic than practical. Were they sacred female-only spaces of empowerment, or just the best people could cobble together with bad lighting and superstition? The truth, as usual, is probably both. You remember snippets of voices from the night before. The women who surrounded you weren't just there to help. They were there to witness, to pass down knowledge. One told a story about a woman who gave birth in a barn and was assisted by a goat. Another recounted a tale of a midwife who sang lullabies so sweet, even the devil himself paused to listen. At one point during your labor, someone passed you a carved wooden spoon to bite down on. You still don't know who. The bite marks remain, a quiet reminder that you're not the first to scream into wood instead of the void. Someone else, maybe your aunt, smeared your wrists with a poultice made of crushed yarrow and vinegar, supposedly to open the channels. It mostly just made your hands smell like a salad. And then there were the prayers. So many prayers. Whispered, sung, muttered like incantations. Most to St. Margaret, naturally, but others floated in from every corner. One woman invoked the Virgin Mary by repeating Ave Maria so softly it became the rhythm to your breathing. Another swore that humming a certain hymn in a minor key would shorten labor by 2 hours. It didn't. And yet, somehow, it worked. Or you worked. Or the baby decided finally to make his way down the birth canal and out into this smoky, sacred space. Now, with the baby sleeping soundly nearby, the birthing room has become almost cozy. Someone's left a candle burning low. You watch the wax trail down in lazy curves, the flame dancing like it knows a secret you don't. One of the women, the midwife's assistant, clears away the linens and cloths. She hums under her breath, a tune you don't recognize, but one that makes you feel very, very tired in a good way. She glances at you, offers a crooked smile, and says something about a good birth. You believe her, mostly because you're still here. You trace your fingers over your belly. It feels strange, hollowed out, like a bowl someone just emptied. It'll take weeks, even months, for your body to resemble anything close to what it was before. And even then, it won't be the same. Your hips feel wider, your skin looser, your heart heavier, but in a warm, weighted way. Eventually, someone will dismantle this room. The cloths will be washed in the stream, the herbs replaced. The midwife will take her knife, her twine, and her prayers, and walk to the next cottage where another belly is swelling. But for now, this is your sanctuary. A smoky, dark, lavender-laced cave where you became something new. A mother, a survivor, a woman with bite marks on a spoon and a child at her breast. And outside, the chickens are still bickering. Life, it seems, goes on. The midwife returns just before dusk. Her shawl is heavier today, spotted with ash from someone else's hearth, and she carries a small pouch that jingles like it holds secrets. You shift upright as she enters, because even though your hips are still sore and your back hums like a plucked lute string, you know she's not here for pleasantries. She's here to check on you, on the baby, and possibly to deliver judgment cloaked in advice. She begins with you. Hands cool and firm, she presses gently around your belly, watching your face for any winces you fail to hide. Still closing, she mutters. Then she lifts the hem of your tunic and inspects the linens underneath. No fever? She asks. You shake your head. She grunts approval and moves on to the baby, who's currently trying to fit his entire fist into his mouth. Midwives are more than helpers. They are guardians, guides, and, depending on who you ask, sorceresses. Some folks claim they can smell a troubled labor before it begins. Others say they dream of births before they happen. Whether healer or heretic, they walk a narrow line, wrapped in layers of cloth and centuries of inherited wisdom. You've known yours, Marta, since you were a girl. She delivered your younger siblings and helped your mother bury the two who didn't last past spring. Her fingers are knotted with arthritis, but they still move with a confidence that comforts even as it unnerves. She carries a crooked spoon for stirring her potions, a tiny mirror made of polished bone, and a set of polished pins wrapped in cloth. You've never asked what they're for. You don't want to know. Today, she produces a small wooden figure from her pouch, Saint Bridget, carved with more affection than precision, and sets it on the windowsill, just in case. It's the season for colic, she says. The saints listen better in the cold. Her attention turns to your chest. Still flowing? She asks, and you nod. The baby latches well, which is another small miracle. Some women struggle. Some can't produce at all. And when that happens, you're left with goat milk, or whatever nursemaid might be willing, or paid, to help. A rich family might hire a wet nurse, but you? You'd be bartering eggs and mending shirts for a decade to afford that. Marta leans close and sniffs. Actually sniffs. Good, she says, satisfied. No sourness. In her world, bad milk has a scent, and good milk has the consistency of wet flour. You don't ask questions. You just keep eating the boiled oats and praying your milk stays sweet. Once, she mentions casually, she treated a woman whose milk turned blue. She claims it was from envy. Another woman in the village gave birth to a son with golden hair, and jealousy curdled her from the inside out. That child wouldn't sleep for 3 weeks, she says, and clicks her tongue. Historians still argue whether such stories were metaphorical or believed literally. Either way, you start humming to your baby's head, just to be safe. Midwives carry heavy knowledge, herbal, anatomical, social, but it's a dangerous weight. Their power is both respected and feared. Marta's been called a wise woman, but you've also heard her muttered about as a crone. Not to her face, of course. She knows too many secrets. She remembers too many births. It's why, when a labor goes wrong, she walks an invisible tightrope. If the baby dies, or the mother bleeds too much, the whispers begin. People ask whether she used the wrong herb or uttered the wrong chant. Did she anger the saints? Or worse, did she invite something else? One woman, not 3 winters ago, died 2 days after birthing twins. Her mother-in-law blamed Marta, claimed she saw her washing her hands in rainwater collected from a tombstone. Marta shrugged it off, said she preferred water that remembered. But the gossip never died. Neither did the suspicion. In fact, in some parts of the countryside, midwives have been dragged before church courts, accused of witchcraft for owning too many herbs, or for whispering Latin backwards, which, for the record, was often just poor Latin. If a baby was stillborn, and the mother heard an owl cry outside her window the night before, that might be enough to summon an inquiry. And if the midwife owned a black cat, forget it. Rope and fire were just a bad day away. Marta doesn't fear this, or if she does, she hides it behind her lopsided smile and the pouch of dried roots tied to her belt. She speaks in firm tones, rarely raises her voice, and has a particular way of staring that makes you confess things you didn't even know were secrets. She tells you, gently, that the baby's swaddle is too tight around the knees. You don't want them growing into a crooked walker. She adjusts it with the swift precision of someone who's done this for decades. You don't argue. Before leaving, she places a scrap of cloth beneath your bed. Mugwort and thistle, she explains, for restful dreams. It smells like dust and something spicy, but you accept it. At this point, your definition of comfort has broadened considerably. The baby stirs and lets out a small squeak. Marta raises an eyebrow. That one's got lungs like a town crier. Good sign. She ties her shawl tighter around her shoulders and stands to leave. You thank her. She pauses at the door, then glances back. Keep a candle lit tonight, she says. Birth draws attention. You don't ask what kind. Spirits, maybe. Animals. Nosy neighbors. Whatever it is, you light the candle, just in case. The night is long and oddly loud. Your baby doesn't so much cry as he announces his displeasure every 90 minutes. A bit like a town crier, as Marta said, but smaller and with less punctuation. You feed him, burp him, rock him in awkward semicircles while whispering half-remembered hymns. Sleep is no longer a right. It's a haggled favor you beg for in 2-hour increments. At some point, someone brings you a bowl of watery porridge and an encouraging look. You're doing well, they say. You want to believe them, but your spine has questions. The birth is behind you now, but the echoes of it remain. Your body still trembles in strange moments. An elbow that forgets how to bend. A sudden ache in your teeth. And worse than the pain is the memory. It lurks in every corner of your birthing chamber, like a guest who won't leave. One of the oddest things about childbirth in the Middle Ages is how noisy it is. And yet, paradoxically, how much of it depends on rhythm, chant, and silence. There are moments during labor that turn into a kind of collective performance, a symphony of sound and sweat. You remember the shouting? Yes. But there were also psalms. There's a reason so many medieval birthing scenes involve scripture. Words were seen not just as comfort, but as power. The right chant at the right moment could, supposedly, ease pain, hasten delivery, or even reverse complications. Whether this was spiritual belief, or psychological balm, or both, historians still debate. You didn't care at the time. If someone had told you to recite the Lord's Prayer backward while standing on one foot, you'd have done it gladly. Some prayers were whispered in Latin. Others were local incantations, passed down orally from woman to woman. One favorite, Saint Anne, bring me ease, from pain release, and grant this babe in peace. Said 3 times, always while holding something warm, often a stone wrapped in cloth and tucked under your knees. And then, of course, came the porridge. It's not glamorous. It's not even particularly flavorful. But it was ever present. A thick, starchy paste that someone insisted would keep your blood from scattering. You weren't sure what that meant, but it did taste vaguely of comfort. At one point, during a particularly strong contraction, someone tried to feed you a spoonful mid-scream. It didn't go well. The midwife simply wiped your chin and said, "At least she's got her appetite." The food, the psalms, the pushing, they all became part of the same rhythm. There was a strange choreography to it. Someone wiped your brow. Another squeezed your hand. You pushed. You breathed. You groaned. You swore, softly and mostly in your head. Then came more chanting. St. Margaret again, of course. She of the dragon fame. One woman recited the story aloud, painting it into the smoky air. Margaret, swallowed whole, cut her way free from the dragon's belly and emerged triumphant. It was supposed to give you courage. You weren't sure how much dragon slaying you were doing, but your lower back certainly felt like something had breathed fire on it. And yet, even amid the shouting and moaning, there was laughter. Someone cracked a joke about your husband's face when the contractions started. Another woman reminisced about a birth where the baby came out so fast they barely had time to warm the towels. "Slippery as an eel," she said, making a whooshing gesture. You laughed, and the pain felt momentarily lighter. It wasn't all sacred chants and solemn faces. There was earthy humor, too. Half-whispered stories of bizarre cravings, midwives who fell asleep during long labors, and one legendary birth where the mother cursed her husband so vividly he hid behind a pigsty for 3 days. The birthing process was communal, messy, and intensely human. It wasn't medicalized. There were no gloves, no sterile tables, no white coats. But there was a kind of deep, intuitive care. Women who had seen dozens of births. Hands that knew how to feel a baby's position without instruments. Eyes that read your pain like scripture. You trusted them more than any distant monk with a book. And in the quiet hours afterward, when the baby had been cleaned and swaddled and your body stopped shivering, you were fed again. More porridge, this time with a bit of honey. A luxury. One of the women joked that you'd earned it by not biting anyone this time. You smiled with cracked lips and tried not to cry from sheer exhaustion. They left you to rest. Now, days later, you still remember the noises, the cries, the chanting, the click of the wooden spoon against the rim of a clay bowl, the soft, rhythmic sound of the midwife's breathing as she guided you through the final push. And now, the new rhythm is here. The baby stirs again. You move with muscle memory, adjusting his swaddle, checking his breath, offering your breast. Outside, the night stretches long and thin. Somewhere, a rooster crows prematurely. You hum a lullaby under your breath, one your mother sang to you when you were too small to remember anything but warmth. The baby makes a noise like a contented hiccup. You pat his back and close your eyes. The psalms are gone. The porridge is cold, but the peace lingers, soft and slow, like candle smoke in a still room. You are half asleep when the door creaks open again. A younger midwife steps inside, a girl, really, perhaps 15, and shyly kneels by your bed. She has a parcel in her hands, wrapped in cloth and smelling faintly of sheep fat and mint. "For sore places," she says. You nod. There are many of those. You shift, gingerly, and feel a tug low in your belly. The baby is dozing, finally, swaddled tight, mouth slack, arms flung out in a posture of innocent surrender. You allow yourself a deep breath. And then you remember, you were lucky. Because not every birth ends as gently as yours. There are the others. The babies that don't cry. The mothers who don't rise. You've seen it happen. Or at least heard the stories, whispered low near the spinning wheel, or while drawing water. Sometimes the baby doesn't come, or comes sideways, or arrives, half out, and simply stops. The labor stalls. The room grows still, and the midwife's voice takes on an edge. That's when they bring out the tools. There are no polished steel forceps here, no gleaming surgical trays, just whatever can be scrubbed, boiled, or blessed quickly enough. Knives, twine, blades that have been in families longer than the names attached to them. You once heard of a woman who gave birth after 4 days of agony. They said her midwife used butter and bellows. Yes, actual bellows, the kind you use to stoke fires. The idea was to warm the birth canal, or possibly frighten the baby into action. Historians still argue whether these methods were common practice or desperate improvisations in rural corners. Either way, someone tried it. If the baby was stuck and refusing to turn, midwives might press and twist the belly, trying to coax the child into motion. One woman swore her midwife whispered directly into her navel. "Come out, you stubborn starfish," she'd muttered, like a mother calling in a wandering cat. And then there's the blade. You try not to think about it too much, but every mother knows what it means when a midwife asks someone to heat the iron. Sometimes, the only choice is to cut. Not the baby, never if it can be helped, but the mother. A perineal incision, not that you'd know the term. All you'd know is the sound of cloth being torn, the smell of iron, the screaming. One woman you knew, the baker's sister, birthed her third child with such tearing that she could never sit comfortably again. They called her Crooked Bess after that. Not cruelly, but with the unspoken sorrow of someone who had paid the toll for life in full coin. When the child is truly stuck, midwives call on prayers darker than those used at the start. There's one to Saint Cyprian, rarely spoken aloud unless things are dire. You've never heard it directly, only the echo of it through your mother's hushed retellings. If the baby dies inside, God forbid, it may need to be removed piece by piece. That fact alone is why midwives were sometimes feared, even hated. Some believed they caused the death. Others believed they saved the mother. Sometimes both were true, and sometimes no one is saved. You think of the stories passed between women, like worn stones traded in quiet spaces. The wife of the blacksmith who gave birth to twins, the second stillborn and delivered 3 days later. The old widow who claimed her first child came out with teeth. The noblewoman whose delivery was so difficult that she was bled afterward, twice, and never spoke again. And yet the most terrifying stories are the ones where no one understands what went wrong. A mother goes into labor with a room full of women, prayers on every tongue, fresh linen at the ready, a fire burning bright, and simply never wakes again. The baby lives, mewling and pink. The mother does not. Taken, they say, by spirits, or exhaustion, or unseen sin. They call it God's will, or the devil's. You heard one tale, long ago, of a woman who screamed names during labor. Not the names of saints, but names no one recognized. Some claimed she was possessed. Others whispered she was cursed, punished for gossip or secret adultery, or just the misfortune of being born on a waning moon. In cases like that, the baby might be baptized immediately, right there in the birthing room. A drop of wine on the forehead, a whispered invocation, just in case. Because if the baby died before being named and blessed, its soul was believed to wander, trapped, unbaptized, outside heaven's gates. Sometimes even the midwife would perform the rite. It was the only sacrament a woman was technically allowed to administer, and only under pressure. You remember your own midwife clutching a vial of wine tightly during your labor, just in case. You didn't ask. She didn't explain. It was simply known. And now, you understand why. The room where you gave birth, the cozy, quiet, herb-scented space, was once a battlefield. The aftermath of victory still lingers in the smell of sweat and the faint scratchiness in your throat. But you survived. Not all women do. You trace your baby's cheek with the back of your finger. He stirs, but does not wake. His breath is warm against your collarbone. In some homes, they keep tokens from difficult births, a piece of cloth, a dried herb, a bent pin, to protect future children. You consider it now. Maybe you'll tuck away the spoon you bit during labor. Maybe that will be enough. Because even though you made it, and your child is here. The memory of what could have gone wrong lingers like smoke in the rafters. You close your eyes and imagine the voices of those who didn't get to whisper lullabies, and you say a quiet prayer for them, just in case. The bells ring in the distance, soft, irregular, far too early. You recognize the pattern, not a call to prayer, but the gentle clang that means someone's at the church door, probably shivering, probably carrying something wrapped in cloth. Baptism day. Your turn. The baby, still red-cheeked and sleepy, is nestled in the crook of your arm. You've wrapped him in your finest wool, meaning it doesn't itch as much as the others. A neighbor lent you a bit of lace to wrap around his head, and the midwife, surprisingly tender, traced a tiny cross on his chest with salt this morning. For strength, she said. You're still sore. You walk slowly. Every step feels like you're learning how legs work again. But you're upright. Mostly. The church is chilly and dark, lit only by narrow windows and a few guttering candles. You whisper your way through the door and shuffle to the front, where the priest stands with a small jug of water, a scrap of white linen, and a look that says he's been up since dawn. He doesn't ask questions. He simply nods and beckons. Baptism isn't just a ritual here. It's a race. Babies must be baptized as quickly as possible, sometimes within hours of birth. Because if they die unbaptized, well, the consequences are eternal. At least, that's what everyone says. The thought of your child wandering some shadowy limbo is too much to bear. Some women perform emergency baptisms themselves when things go wrong. Just a whisper of holy words and water or wine on the brow. You know one woman who baptized her baby in tears. Whether the church would count that, no one knows. But she slept easier afterward. Historians still debate how rigid the theology truly was. Was limbo really a dogma, or just a fear that grew into a rule? What is clear is that no mother in the Middle Ages wanted to take the chance. The priest begins to chant in Latin, his voice echoing faintly against the stone. You don't understand most of it. You don't have to. The words themselves are meant to do the work. Your husband stands beside you, unusually silent. He's cleaned up for the occasion, which mostly means he wiped his boots and remembered to brush the straw from his sleeves. His face is unreadable. You wonder if he's scared. You wonder if he's relieved. You step forward. The baby is fussing now, sensing the change in temperature. Maybe. Or just objecting to being held by someone who doesn't smell like boiled onions and milk. You hand him over to the priest, who barely glances at you before he begins. He pours the water. The baby lets out a yelp. Not a cry, just a bark of confusion, and then settles again. The linen is dabbed over his brow. A mark is made with oil. The priest declares him baptized in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Just like that, your child is claimed. Not by you, not entirely, by God. There's an odd mixture of comfort and surrender in the moment. He is yours, but also not. He belongs to something bigger now. A village, a church, a world that might keep him or lose him, depending on 100 invisible whims. You receive him back in your arms, and the warmth of his small body hits you like sunlight through a shutter. He smells like candle wax and wool, and that faint, sweet, sour scent that only newborns carry. You hold him closer. There's no party afterward. Maybe a small hunk of cheese passed around, if someone's in a generous mood. A sip of ale. A muttered blessing or two. Then everyone goes back to their tasks. Picking weeds, tending animals, fixing the thatch. Life doesn't pause for a sacrament. It just notes it and moves on. You return to your cottage slowly. Every step home feels longer than it should. That night, you light a small candle and place it near the cradle. Not too close. Fire is still fire, but close enough to keep the darkness in check. You tuck a dried flower under the baby's swaddle, calendula for protection. You're not even sure where the tradition started. You just remember your mother doing it. The baby stirs in his sleep, lets out a small sigh, and curls his hands into fists. You watch him, your heart soft and leaden all at once. Birth was the first risk, but this world offers many more. There's illness, famine, accidents with sharp tools, and colder winters. And there are deeper fears, the unseen ones. Envy, evil eyes, whispers in the night. The woman down the road who never had children and looks too long at others' babies. No one says anything, but everyone watches. You've heard of changelings, of course. Babies swapped by spirits, left with strange habits and hollow eyes. One woman claimed her son stopped smiling at 8 weeks and started shrieking every time the fire was lit. She swore he was no longer hers. The village eventually took the child into the forest and left him overnight on a stone, hoping the fairies would return the real one. He never came back. You shiver and look down at your baby again. Still breathing, still warm, still yours. You touch your fingers lightly to the crown of his head, where the skull is still soft, where the world pressed through. You're safe, you whisper, though you don't entirely believe it. No mother ever truly does. The candle burns low. The air smells of tallow and milk, and the faintest trace of calendula. Outside, the wind howls. But inside, for now, the world is still. You're not out of the woods yet. In fact, in medieval terms, the woods are still closing in around you. Childbirth may be behind you, but the days that follow are often the most dangerous. Your body is in flux, drained, stretched, and dangerously open. A wound, not just metaphorically, but literally. Your womb must shrink, your bleeding must stop, and your strength must return, all without the help of antibiotics or real rest. And if it doesn't, well, you've seen what happens. There's a name whispered softly in kitchens and behind hay carts. Childbed fever. Not a precise term, but you know what it means. Fever, bleeding, confusion, cold sweat, death within days. It's no one's fault exactly, though you suspect they'll find someone to blame if it comes to that. They might blame the midwife. They might blame your mother's milk. They might even blame you for not following some herb-laced instruction to the letter. That's the thing about survival in this world. It's rarely guaranteed and never truly explained. For now, you count each day you're still breathing as a victory. The bleeding continues. They say it should, to clear out the afterbirth, though no one really knows what that means beyond the obvious. You're given warm infusions, mild teas of motherwort and raspberry leaf, if they're available. Someone brings a cloth soaked in wine to press against your belly. For cleansing, they say. It stings. You try not to move too much. Sitting is uncomfortable. Standing is a negotiation between pain and necessity. Lying down is easiest, but dangerous too. Staying still for too long invites chills, and chills invite death. You change the linens regularly. Or rather, someone does it for you. You thank them with weak smiles and murmurs. You used to feel shy about others seeing your body in this state, but shame is a luxury you've long since bled out. They feed you broth. Again. Porridge thickened with barley. Maybe a boiled egg, if someone's chickens were generous. Occasionally a neighbor brings sweetened wine, spiced with cloves and hope. You drink it gratefully. Then there's the churching. It doesn't happen yet, not for a while, but you already hear whispers of it. A special blessing, a cleansing ritual. You're technically impure until then, not quite welcome in the full embrace of the village's holy life, not fully reintegrated, not until a priest has said the words and waved the incense and declared you safe to return. You don't feel impure. You feel exhausted. But the church is very clear about this. Until you're churched, you're not to take communion, not to step near the altar. You can attend Mass, yes, but from the back, like someone peeking into a life they've temporarily been excluded from. Historians still debate whether women saw churching as shame or relief, a declaration of uncleanliness, or an official welcome back to public life. You're not sure either. All you know is it marks something, a before and after, a boundary you have to cross with bowed head and clean hands. Some say that if you die before being churched, your soul hovers longer than most, that it's confused, still clinging to the world of blood and birth. Again, you don't ask questions. You simply light a candle at night and sleep with your baby on your chest. He's gaining weight now. His cheeks are plumper, and he makes strange hiccupy noises that almost sound like laughter. You start to feel a flutter of something you haven't in days. Hope. But hope comes with its own superstitions. You don't boast. You don't say, he's strong. You say, he fusses, or he's greedy. Humble words to avoid tempting fate. Still, in the dark, you hum to him. You kiss his tiny fingers. You let yourself imagine what his first word might be, what his walk will look like. One evening, you step outside, just for a moment. The air is cool and damp. It smells like rain and smoke. You lean against the doorframe, baby in your arms, and watch the sky soften into dusk. It feels like a quiet triumph. You're still bleeding, a little. Your back aches, but you're upright. You're healing, slowly. And when the time comes, you'll walk to the church in your cleanest tunic, with your hair plaited, and stand before the altar while the priest blesses you back into the world. But until then, you'll rest, or try to, because rest is never guaranteed, not for mothers. The next feeding is always minutes away. The fire needs stoking, the linens need drying, and your own body needs more tending than anyone truly understands. But tonight, the candle flickers gently, the baby sleeps, and your soul, though sore and shaken, begins to settle back into your bones. You wake to the sound of grunting. Not your husband, not the chickens, not even your own weary moan as you shift your aching hips on the straw-stuffed mattress. No, it's the baby. Your baby, red-faced and furious at the injustice of hunger, the tightness of his swaddle, or perhaps the indignity of having soiled himself again. Likely all three. You sigh, a long, slow exhale, and begin the now familiar process. Unlatch the swaddle, check the linen wrap beneath, grimace at the mess, and set about cleaning him with a damp rag warmed by the hearth. Diapers, as you think of them today, don't really exist in your time. What you have are cloths, squares of linen or wool, reused, rinsed, and dried daily. Sometimes stuffed with moss or soft hay for extra absorbency. A clean baby is a lucky baby, they say. And a mother who manages to keep him clean? A sorceress in her own right. After cleaning, you swaddle him again. The swaddle isn't just for warmth. It's practically a straitjacket. Babies are wrapped tightly from neck to ankle, arms pinned to their sides, like tiny saints prepared for burial. It looks alarming to modern eyes, but here, it's a sign of care. A crooked limb at birth could become a lifelong affliction. Binding them tight, the wisdom goes, keeps their bones growing, honestly. Still, sometimes you loosen the wrap a bit, just to give him a moment of wiggle. You coo softly as he stretches like a yawning frog, his fingers flexing, tiny fists clenching and unclenching, as if practicing for future tantrums. You lean in, whisper to him. It's what mothers do, because another tradition runs quietly alongside the wrapping and feeding. Words. You whisper blessings, old songs, fragments of prayers. You tell your baby secrets he'll never remember. You press your lips to the soft spot on his head, still a little warm, still a little pulsing, and murmur, be kind, be strong, be careful, just in case the world is listening. Historians have found lullabies from across Europe dating back to this era. Many are simple, rhythmic, repetitive, soothing in their dullness. But some are oddly poetic, dark even. One old French lullaby warns the child not to smile at strangers, lest the devil see your teeth. Another from Scandinavia tells of a sleeping child who drifts across the sky to visit the moon. You don't remember the exact words of your mother's lullabies, but your body does. The tune comes out of you unbidden, sung as you sway with your child in arms, his eyes fluttering in time with the cadence. Then come the protective charms. Some mothers tie tiny bags around their babies' necks, filled with salt, ash, or bits of iron. Others stitch verses into the edges of swaddling cloths using thread dipped in holy water. You've done neither, yet. But you do keep a sprig of dried rosemary under the cradle and a sliver of iron by the door. Not because you're superstitious, of course, just practical. And there are rules. Never let the baby stare too long at an open fire. He might see things he shouldn't. Never call him pretty aloud. Jealous spirits may hear and come to take him. Instead, say he's fussy. Say he smells. Say he eats like a greedy piglet. It's not just tradition. It's strategy. You've heard of changelings. Everyone has. Stories of babies who suddenly stop growing, stop looking at their mothers, stop smiling. Some believe fairies steal healthy babies and leave behind theirs. Frail, hollow-eyed things with no spark behind the gaze. To ward them off, some mothers place a pair of scissors beneath the cradle, blades open. Others scatter barley grains around the bed. Spirits, it's said, must stop to count them before getting any further. Do you believe in all this? Maybe not fully. But when you glance at your baby, his chest rising and falling, his lashes casting tiny shadows, you feel the tug of old fears. Better to be safe. He sneezes, a perfectly ordinary sneeze. But the old woman next door would cluck and say, "He's sensing a draft from beyond." You wrap him tighter. Infant care in your time is as much about ritual as it is about need. Feed, clean, swaddle, guard, repeat, and in between, pray. Sometimes you let him suck on your finger between feedings. Not because he's hungry, just because it soothes him. You remember someone once saying that letting a baby do that will turn him into a thief. You do it anyway. Because for all the rituals, all the rules, and fears, and salt, and scissors, there's something stronger pulling at your center. Love. Not the kind with roses and poetry. The kind that sits heavy in your gut and makes you get up, again and again, despite sore knees and torn muscles. The kind that lets you sing off-key lullabies at midnight. The kind that whispers, "Stay," when the cradle creaks. You lift him again, tuck him into your chest, and sway. Outside, the wind knocks gently at the shutters. Somewhere in the village, a dog barks once and is silent. You hum again. Something wordless, timeless, ancient as the ache in your back. And your child, a burrito of linen and hope, sighs in his sleep. You're visiting the baker's wife when it happens. She's pale, sweating, her hands gripping the edge of the birthing stool like it's trying to float away. The room smells like sage, yeast, and fear. You're not the midwife. You're only there to bring a boiled cloth and lend a steady hand. But when things go wrong, roles shift quickly. The midwife's voice is sharp. "She's too early," she says under her breath, and the baby's turned. The labor is chaotic in a way you recognize. The woman groans, then screams, then goes silent. That's the part that terrifies you, the sudden silence. The baby, when it comes, is small, quiet. The midwife frowns, mutters a prayer, and begins rubbing, patting, coaxing. You've seen it before, too many times. Stillbirth, or maybe not. The line is thin, too thin. The baby wheezes once, like a deflating wineskin, and then nothing. The mother, exhausted, doesn't ask. Not yet. She just lays there, eyes unfocused, lips trembling. The midwife whispers to the assistant, something about Saint Apollonia, something about fetching wine and ash. You back away slowly, because this is the part of childbirth that no one sings about. Later that night, you sit by your own hearth, staring into the flames, your child snuffling softly beside you. Your mind is heavy with stories, some recent, some older, passed down through whispers and widows' tales. There's the queen who died in her velvet sheets, bleeding from everywhere after trying to birth a fifth heir. Her nurse had tried to use crushed pearls in water to calm the womb, she'd said. Didn't work. The baby lived. The queen didn't. There's the woman in the next village over who delivered a child with 2 heads. They said she must have dreamed of demons during her pregnancy. Her husband left. The child died before winter. She still lives, but rarely speaks. There's Lady Margot, noble, beautiful, and unlucky. Her 3rd labor ended with a child too large to pass. The surgeon, and we use that word generously, attempted an extraction with forceps carved from ivory. The child didn't survive. Neither did Lady Margot. But the story did. The stories never stop. They are retold with reverence and dread. Some embellished, some soberingly true. Historians still debate how often such tragedies occurred. But between poor sanitation, limited understanding of anatomy, and a heavy reliance on guesswork, it's fair to say childbirth was one of the leading causes of death for women. And not just peasant women. Nobles, royals, even cloistered nuns fell victim if their vows were broken or their secrets poorly kept. Even miracles came with caveats. You remember hearing of Saint Amalberga, who gave birth painlessly. They say it was divine grace. You also remember that she died within a week. She was too close to heaven, someone had said. That, or she caught fever from a blade not properly cleaned. One woman, known only as Ellis the Black, was recorded in a church ledger for having 14 children. Only 5 lived past infancy. Still, they called her blessed. She was seen as proof that even tragedy could be a kind of divine favor. Back in your own home, your baby stirs. You lift him instinctively. His face, still a little spotty with newborn rash, scrunches as he lets out a whimper, then falls silent again. His weight feels heavier today. Or maybe you're just noticing it more. You rock him gently and think of the names that were never carved in stone. Babies who died before being baptized were often buried without markers. Just a prayer, a patch of earth, maybe a stone if the parents dared. Some say those souls walk still, looking for names, for voices, for lullabies left unfinished. So many lullabies unfinished. Sometimes, when the wind howls just right, you swear you can hear them. There's one tale, not too far from your village, of a woman who carried triplets. 2 were stillborn. The 3rd lived only 1 night. She buried them beneath the hawthorn tree and visited every full moon. People said she was cursed. Others said she was touched by grace. You think perhaps she was just a mother. You clutch your baby closer. And then, like a whispered counterweight to all the sorrow, you think of Marta again, your midwife, with her hunched back and quiet smile. The way she handled your labor, like a practiced dance. The time she slapped a baby on the back and declared, "He'll be loud, this one." Loud is good. The way she whispered stories to the newborns, as if helping them settle into their skin. She's seen more births than anyone else in the village, and more deaths. And still she comes, every time, with her pouch of tools, her bundle of herbs, her quiet voice. She's never once called herself brave, but you do. You glance back at the cradle. Your baby has fallen asleep again. One hand stretches upward, fingers curled loosely like a vine. You kiss the crown of his head, breathe in that sweet, milky scent, and whisper a name you heard once in a dream. Because he lives. And for now, that is enough. You're back at the well when you first notice the whispers. At first, they're soft, disguised as compliments. "He's strong," says one neighbor, examining your baby as if he's a piglet up for trade. You must be feeding him well. You nod politely, pull your shawl a little tighter and shift your weight. Your knees still protest, and he's standing still. But then another speaks. He's quiet, she says, too casually. Quiet babies worry me. You smile, but your gut tenses. You've heard this before? Not about your child, yet, but about others. Too quiet, too pale, too greedy. A baby's behavior is a community matter, whether you like it or not. In a village where everything is shared, fire, bread, sorrow, babies are no exception. They're held by everyone, commented on by everyone, and sometimes judged by everyone. You try not to bristle, but it continues. A few days later, someone leaves a bundle of yarrow and sage by your door. Not unusual. Herbs are often traded, especially to new mothers. But this one is tied with a red string, a quiet sign. Protection, perhaps, or suspicion. You hear murmurs. His eyes don't move right, says the old woman who sells onions. He stares too long. He sleeps too soundly, adds a younger woman, more curious than cruel, as if he's listening. You want to shout? He's a baby. But you don't, because you know how this goes. Once the whispers start, they rarely stop. You remember a woman, Tilda, whose baby was born with a birthmark shaped like a leaf. People said it was a sign. They didn't say what of, just a sign. Tilda kept her child indoors for weeks, only to have the midwife summoned for a rash that turned out to be a heat sore. Still, the rumors stuck. They said she'd let the child sleep under the moonlight, uncovered. Superstitions cling like dust. If your child cries too much, it's bad milk. If he doesn't cry enough, it's a spirit lodged in his throat. If he hiccups, someone has cursed you in a dream. If he sneezes, someone nearby is hiding envy. If he's too alert, he's not really yours, just borrowed. Historians still argue how deeply such fears influence daily life versus how much was exaggerated later by those looking back. But you live it. You don't need a ledger to tell you how heavy a stare can feel. Your husband shrugs it off. Let them talk, he says. He's healthy. That's what matters. You admire his indifference. And yet, you notice he hangs the horseshoe over the cradle just a little lower. You catch him muttering a blessing before feeding. Maybe he's not so indifferent after all. You begin to adapt. You pretend to trip over a stone when someone compliments the baby. Ah, I've ruined the luck, you joke. You spit twice, once for tradition, once for insurance. You brush your fingers across his forehead in the shape of a cross each morning. Not because you believe he's in danger, but because they do. There's pressure to perform motherhood a certain way. You must appear attentive, but not anxious. Loving, but not smothering. If your baby is too fat, you're indulgent. Too thin, negligent. If he smiles too early, they say he's touched. Too late, and something's wrong. The goalposts shift daily, and you play the game barefoot in mud. Still, some moments help. You're invited to the neighbor's bake day, where loaves are traded, stories swapped, and someone's toddler pees on a cabbage. Laughter flows. A small victory. Your baby gurgles, and someone calls him a blessing. For a few moments, the shadows lift. Later that week, you hear the blacksmith's wife had a difficult labor. Her baby came breech. They summoned Marta again. You send a small bundle of dried mint and thyme. It's not much, but it says, I see you. You start to feel the rhythm of the village again. Your days regain shape. Feedings blur into sunrises. Chores return. Not all, but enough. You carry the baby in a sling while kneading dough, and someone passes by, clucking affectionately. He looks just like your father. You smile, even if he doesn't, because the point is no longer accuracy, it's inclusion. You're re-entering the fold, one comment, one nod, one bundle of herbs at a time. Still, you never forget how easily the tide could turn. The same villagers who bring nettle tea could turn cold with one strange cough, one sleepless night of crying, one dream told too vividly to the wrong person. So you watch. You listen. You wrap your baby in both wool and ritual. And when you lay him down at night, you whisper, "Stay mine." Because you know the village watches, and the village remembers. But you do too. You remember what it took to bring him here. The blood, the breath, the songs half sung through gritted teeth. And you will not let him be taken by whispers or winds or superstitions. Not while you are still breathing. Morning light slips in through the slats in the shutters. It's gentle today, pale and unhurried, brushing softly across the rough wooden floor where your baby lies swaddled in his cradle. He's sleeping, truly sleeping, with the slack-mouthed stillness that only newborns and old dogs seem to master. You should sleep too, but you're sitting upright, spine curved like a shepherd's staff, watching the way his tiny chest rises and falls. It's hypnotic. You made it. You're not sure how. It all blurs now. Those first nights, the pain and noise, the strange dance between agony and awe. But here you are, in a quiet room, with your child alive and warm and real. It doesn't feel like triumph. Not exactly. More like survival pressed gently into your bones. The kind that doesn't celebrate, but exhales. Your neighbor drops by with more leek broth. Again. It'll keep the humors balanced, she insists. You thank her. Again. You've had so much leek broth in the past fortnight, you're fairly sure your blood now smells of onion. Still, you drink it. You smile. She coos at the baby and, satisfied, leaves behind a charm of rosemary tucked in linen. For colic, she says, and temper. Your husband returns from the fields at dusk. He smells of hay and fatigue. He sits next to you without speaking and touches your arm, just for a moment. He's not good with words, but you feel the message in the press of his palm. Later that evening, you step outside. It's your first proper outing since the birth. Just a few steps into the yard, but it feels like crossing a border. You're still weak, sure, but there's a quiet pride in how your feet hold you upright, how your lungs fill without hitching. The chickens blink at you, unimpressed. The sky is marbled with twilight blue and dusty pink. A breeze moves through the trees like a whisper. You hold your child and point upward, though he doesn't understand. That's the moon, you say anyway. She's always watching. You return inside, heart steadier than before. There's work again. Always work. Cloth to mend, grain to grind, animals to tend. Motherhood doesn't pause the rest of life. It becomes the lens through which all else is seen. And your body? It's healing. Slowly. The soreness recedes like an old bruise. The bleeding has mostly stopped. You can sit without flinching, though you still sleep in odd, curled positions to ease the pull in your back. You stretch more. You hum more. Your milk has settled into its rhythm. The baby feeds well now, latching without fuss, making satisfied little piglet noises. You've even started eating meals with both hands again. Small miracles. And the village? They've resumed their rhythms too. There are no more sharp glances, no more loaded remarks. People greet you with nods and bundles of herbs, with baskets of wilted vegetables and lukewarm congratulations. That's how affection works here. Quiet, practical, unadorned. One day, the priest stops you on your way to the well. He looks strong, he says, nodding at your son. God favors him. You don't reply with theology. You just smile. A long, quiet, slow-spreading smile. Because maybe he does. Or maybe the midwife's tea did the trick. Or maybe you just got lucky. You've learned not to question blessings, only to hold them gently, like warm coals cupped in your palm. Later that night, with the baby asleep and the fire low, you rest your head on your husband's shoulder. He says nothing, but he breathes deeper when you do. The room is dark now, except for the glow of the coals and the flicker of candlelight reflecting off the cradle's edge. You watch that flicker until your eyes blur and you start to drift. You've crossed something. There is no ceremony, No trumpet to mark the moment. But it's there. This shift. You're no longer the woman who feared childbirth. You are the woman who survived it, who endured, who emerged not unscathed, but realigned. You are a mother now. A strange, wonderful, terrible thing. And it's only just begun. You rise, one last time, to check the baby. His breathing is steady. His arms twitch beneath the swaddle. You press a kiss to his forehead, just above his left brow, and whisper a promise. I'll keep you safe. You're not sure if it's true, but you'll try. You lie down at last, body warm beneath the blanket, breath slowing, thoughts softening like butter left out too long. The cradle creaks once, then settles, and the house sleeps.